Hello again guys, this is me, I'm Nafed. Today with this video we're going to explain the relationship between Aruba Central and the VSF stacking. So we'll be using Central to configure the stacking on the switch. And simply speaking, we're going to go over a few things here basically. So we will first of all make sure the switch has been added to Aruba Central, has been assigned a license. Then we will investigate the switch different types of groups. So basically we're going to talk about user interface group, and we will add the switch initially to the user interface group, and then we'll form the stack. After which we will have the stack of two switches, and in this case we're going to just create a new group, and that group will be template based group, and we will see the relationship between the template based group and the switches. So we're going to move now the stacked switches from the GUI or user interface group into the template based group, after which we will create a template, and we will investigate basically variables. These variables are going to be also manipulated as a JSON format. And lastly, we will also look at a tool that is configuration comparison tool to compare what is being configured on the switch and what is being expected, and we'll verify all configuration at the end of the video that everything works as expected and the stack of the switches has been formed. Let's go. So first of all, make sure that the switches have been assigned to the right customer, correct one. Now in this case it has been assigned to the dummy account lab customer 11, and you can clearly see that these two devices have been assigned to that customer. Now, not only that, they have been also been assigned foundation license, which is the license that is assigned to these switches. So these switches are visible from Central point of view to start with. So then we're going to go back and check Central on the switch. So at least we have added them, we have mapped them to our customers, and we have assigned subscription for that. Look into the switches. Switches are not really VSF now, so they're not stacked basically. So we look at this, we're gonna see show VSF, there's nothing, right? And show Aruba Central, we have not yet connected it to Aruba Central, but it is now connected because we assigned the license. So Aruba Central, we can see it is connected here. The other switch is gonna join the stack later on, but we're gonna configure the stack from the GUI interface. So what we're going to do right now, we will add the switch to a GUI group inside Central, and we're going to use that GUI group to configure the stack. So that's an option. We're going to then look at moving the switch from that GUI group to a template based group, and we will configure some parameters in the template. We're going to see how that works. So we are in Central now, we are MSP, and we will launch the Central now. So GreenLake, HPE GreenLake, will take us this to Central account, and the customer we would like to get into, that is the same. There's no difference between this and a normal customer account. So we are going to the customer specific in this case. We can see now, we click on devices, we're in the global view. If you click on devices, we go switches, we should see one switch online, and that's the switch we have seen before. Now what we'd like to do is to create a GUI group for that switch. So here we have one group because that's a default. I would like just to create a new group, this call it switch GUI, and we're going to make it only for switches for ease of use, and there's nothing here. We will not use this. We're going to go next, and it doesn't really matter, but we will say just leave it as is, and we go add. So the group was created, and the unprovisioned device, we can see that unprovisioned device because it had configuration by default. Central will not add it to any group, and we're going to go for this. Now we're going to move that switch to this GUI group. Obviously, if you do this, the switch, so if you move to the GUI group, let's have a look and move it. So now switch is part of the GUI group. Perfect. So if we go here in the global config view, we can see the GUI switch GUI group, and if we go to devices under that group, we should be able to see, because that is for switches, and because we have selected for both, we are only S, which is our switch. Now devices, in this case we only have single device. So once we have this, we're going to see that we can we will need to configure the stack from here. We're going to configure the stack from here. Let's double check the switch itself and whether the switch is still connected to central or not after adding it to a GUI group. We're going to issue the same command again here, show Aruba Central. We can see no. The reason for this, the group has overwritten settings on that switch. That's not a big deal because we do it in the lab. Assuming that is acceptable, because that's only a lab environment, you never do it, as we said before, any configured switch or pre-configured switch, you never add it to a GUI group, because that will lose all config. So if I issue the command show VLAN, for example, you're going to see we lost all VLANs. The only thing we left is with the default VLAN. But we will make this switch pick up an IP address automatically, so from a DHCP server, and then the switch will be fine to connect to central. So we're going to do that right now, basically. Let us double check the IP on the switch. So show IP. The switch should pick up an IP from a DHCP server, so it might take 1 or 2 minutes because the DHCP server is getting ready now. Now we can see the switch has picked up an IP address in that VLAN, so the switch should be able to reach central now, right? So we're going to look at that, and I'm going to show Aruba Central. We might need to do some stuff, so maybe we might need to issue one of these command enable, or we might need to issue the command activate provision force. So sometimes, so this is another command here, and we know that it's a matter of time, but it's going to pick up show Aruba Central. Then it is managed by Aruba Central. So the switch is fully managed by Aruba Central. The switch has been added to Aruba Central account, and it is part of the GUI interface. We'll go to the configuration here, and we'll go for the stack. And in the stack, we will configure the stacking for the switch. So we're going to add, and the only switch we have is this switch now. This is the serial number for the serial number Z022. Double check that's it's a serial number by issuing the command show system. And that's the serial number here, matches whatever we see in central. So doing this, we'll give it a link 1. Let's just give it a name. Let's say link 1. And the interface or the member port will be 1/6. These are the interfaces, or this is the interface that is connected. We're going to just use one interface. Part of the configuration, you have to configure domain ID. So domain ID 1, and the speed we're going to select is 1 gig. That's what the switch has got. Save and reboot. So we're going to save and reboot. That should force the switch to reboot. The stack should reboot and will take at least 5 minutes to be functioning. Check the stack later on. So if we go to the switch itself, a reboot signal has been sent, and this has happened automatically. The switch will save current configuration. It has been saved and rebooted. We'll come back and revisit the switch after the reboot is over. So now the switch has rebooted. Let's have a look. And hopefully that has now the stack enabled. Show int brief, you should see 1/ something. So that's the switch, and show VSF. We can see the stack is up. It's like Commander as the only one that is configured here. We will join the other switch in this to the stack. So the other switch is going to reset the switch completely here, and it will reboot, erase startup. It's going to reboot, and upon the reboot, they are connected on interface 1/1/6, and then they will sense the stack, and it will form a stack. So we're gonna just come back to this one once that reboots. Let's have a look at the switch now. It should now username. This is the default behavior. Just say admin then admin, admin again. The switch has been reset and has picked up the VSF hellos. So you can see VSF fabric with domain ID equals 1. So that's gonna reboot and join the stack. It is now initializing, so it's rebooted and joined the stack. So you connect to the commander. Now it's table 11. Show int brief. We're gonna see the two switches listed here, and the stack is working. So we configured the stack from Central on the GUI interface group. We'll go back now to Central and perform few tasks. Now let's go to Aruba Central. We can see the switch VSF stack in here, the stack ID, and the member, there's one member here. So basically now we can push configuration into the switch. We can see in the stack we have these two switches. Let's say go to the interfaces, we go VLANs. We can create a new VLAN here if need be, so we will not touch that for the time being. Let's do one thing in here, create a template based group and move the switches to a template based group. Obviously you can do configs here. Any config can be pushed to the switch, and we can verify the configuration using a configuration audit. Let's move these switches to a template based group. We're going to create a new group that we call a template base, and we'll move the switches to that specific group. Let's have a look. So in this case we have a new group, say switch template group, just a name to indicate, give us a hint, template, and we're going to create a template here for switches. We'll go next, we leave it as is, we'll go add, and then we have created a template based group. What then we can do is we go to that group where the switches belong to, and we're going to move these. We highlighted two switches, and we're going to move these switches to that template based group basically. So there we go. Now these switches have become members of the template based group. If you try to move the switches back to a GUI group, that will be rejected. And this is to protect the switches from losing the config. So example here, let's say we try to move it back to the GUI. I'm going to say move. That should get an error message or warning. You can't do that. Right. Okay. So we agree and we know that. Now let's go to that template based group where the switches belong to, and make sure that we can see both of these switches. You see a list of switches here, and we can see the sign. This is stack switches. Click on it. You can see the list now. You can see, overall view. Two switches in the stack, one stack, all that sorted out. That's the commander or the conductor, which is Z022. If you go to the switch and you can issue the command show VSF, you will notice the first switch is the commander, which is this one, with that MAC address. Do you see this? And if I issue the command show system, that should show a list of two switches basically. The first one being the commander, which is the Z022. Okay, and the second switch is simply speaking Z0HL, which is the standby member 2. Do you see this? And that's the switch, and software version, obviously both of them will have the same software version. In this case is WC1610. That's all working. Let's see what we can do. So let's say I would like to be, I'm inside a template group, and I go to devices, I go to config. Now we are able to configure template here. So we can create a template, and the template, when we create a template, let's say stack template, just any name can be. It's Aruba switches. You can clearly see we are not CX. This is Aruba switches. The model here, we're going to say all, and we're going to leave the version as all. So we're going to say next, and we're going to pick up the switch that we're going to pick up the stack from. So that's table 11, which is both of these switches basically And these are the configs that are inside the switch. And we're going to go save. Password command, the template, that's very much expected. So we go to the end of the line and we press enter. We go 1, 2, 3. This say password manager. That's the username. We can use a different username, but we'll leave it as is. Password manager, plain text. Let's say manager. Okay. There we go. In the variables here, we can see a list of variables that are that pertain to both of these switches. Now, of course, online you can edit the variables and you can make changes if you would like to. And these are the two switches, but this is the main switch. Basically, that's the IP address, that name of the switch, and so on. So I could do this. You look into this now. We can open using Notepad++. It's easier to do this, right? So we can go for this. That is a JSON format file. You can clearly see the first switch, the first section here. Obviously, if you close this, obviously it closes everything. And these are different sections. So two switches, each with a serial number. They have two sections. The first one is the commander. So we can see the we can add a new variable here and use it inside the switch. So we're gonna go add a new one. And we're not gonna touch or change any of these things. So we're gonna leave it as is. So we're gonna, for ease of usage, I will copy this and we'll make changes, right? That's a new line. I'm going to say tagged VLAN disable. Okay, and the value should be true. And that's it. So I'm going to just do that. I'm going to save it. And we will upload that specific file. So now we will upload the variable file here. Everything looks fine. We should see the new variable listed here. We might need to refresh the page. So we can see a new variable has been updated here. So I can edit and just make change to this value. I just say disable, right? So if we refresh the page, might need to just look at that. So the new variable name, we can then use this variable to go and use it inside the template itself. So if we go and edit the template, and we might say interface 1/2, and we might want to use the variable inside that interface. Say try it on one of these interfaces, and we're going to use that one into interface 1/1/2. And if we go for this one, and we would like to use that variable, so we're going to start with a %sign, then the variable name, and we're going to just close it basically. So the interface 1/2 is disabled. We're going to just do that, and we're going to close this by this. So now in theory, this should be replaced with the value that is inside the variable file or the variables file. So here we can see, go to audit configuration. Audit should have no errors here. There are no issues whatsoever. See, the value has been replaced by disabled. Do you see this? But obviously we made a mistake here. The mistake we have made is we have not indented, so indentation was missing. So we're going to go back and do the indentation. That's all good. So that's perfect. So if we go to the command line, we should expect that interface should be to be disabled. Show we literally have disabled interface number 2. It won't make difference in this case because it's not connected anywhere, but it says disabled as per what we have configured in our variable file, and it means the config from central has been pushed into this switch. If we do, if we go back and just change the value here into enable, right? So if we come here and just edit the value here, and we say enable, which is enabling the interface. Now hopefully everything works fine, no issues. Let's have a look. There's no problem, so there's 0 device not in sync. So if we go back to the switch and issue the same command, we should expect the output to be slightly different with that interface is enabled now. Do you see this? And that has demonstrated the value for variables. How can we really manipulate and push values into the switches from the variable file? So this is a template basic group.